Good morning. Well, since you mentioned Spanish and the Mexican and Latin thing, I'll tell you that I just got back Wednesday. Let's see, was it? Yeah, Wednesday evening. I'm still not re-entered here, I guess, from Mexico. I was there for 2 weeks, and I've been in a town called Ajijic for the latter week of the time that I was there. The first week I was kind of like on a little vacation, went with a friend through Copper Canyon and over to Mazatlan and Puerto Vallarta and that kind of stuff. But then the second week I went to Ajijic, where I'm becoming more involved with the center there that was started by a fellow from the Tacoma, Washington area. And it's called the Lake Chapala Center for Spiritual Living. And I'm going back in January, and we're going to do some workshops and classes in Spanish. So those of you who want to learn in Spanish, just come on down there too, you know. Would that be okay? They have a big place, and I'm going to be kind of house sitting this place that has like 7 bedrooms, so maybe I could have company. We'll just have to find out if that's agreeable with the owners or not, I suppose. At any rate, the last time I was here, I wasn't too much in voice, so I'm glad to have my voice back today, but I'm having a little more challenge still going on with this, whatever this is, that is a consequence of the stuff in my life. So as Bonnie said, I'm often up here transforming myself or talking to you about what's going on in my life because I don't think I'm unique, and I believe that one of the benefits that I have had in the past from ministers of mine on this pulpit has been their willingness to be transparent about what's happening in their lives and how they're moving forward through it. So for those of you who are concerned about my health, the sinus infection is still not completely gone, but the infection part is gone. I've had 2 rounds of antibiotics and a homeopathic remedy from a naturopath that's part of the center there in Ajijic. So I'm finally coming out the other end of it, but a little bit of coughing and hacking going on. And I've tried, Beth suggested that I try not to snort during the talk. So I asked her to hold me in consciousness for that I won't be snorting during the talk. So I've mentioned to you all in the past when I've been up here, every once in a while I've said something about this, I think, that I kind of watch for, or wait for, or am aware of the cosmic download for what I'm supposed to talk about. I was taught by one of my spiritual teachers that the idea is to be of service to the group and to open ourselves up and to pray for whatever comes that says this is what God wants, this is what Spirit wants. It doesn't come from my ego, it comes from Spirit. So because of my travels and whatever all else, I knew the theme was my cup runneth over, but I wasn't getting anything coming. It wasn't quite coming until this week, as a matter of fact. So the first things that I wanted to mention that came to me, and Lisa told me before service today that you all are going to start producing bumper stickers, so she said it's time for me to bring out some of my bumper stickers and that I'm fond of. I call them little sound bites or bumper stickers. The things that help me remember principle, I hope help you all remember principle. Well, this isn't one that necessarily that I've adopted for remembering principle, but now that it became the theme for this month, it sort of is. So the first part of the month, I couldn't get this out of my mind because one of my sort of mantras for myself is my cup runneth over, because it's usually when I'm taking something out of my bra and someone says, where'd that come from? Those of you who know me, and if you didn't know this beforehand, and certainly those of you who were at my 60th birthday party just a few days ago, was it 7 or 8 years ago now, we had a whole Peggy look-alike contest thing as a part of the party, and a number of the people who came dressed as Peggy, including Bob Burns, came dressed as me. And Gordon Butler's wife, Marcy, is the one who won the contest. But I remember Lisa had a couple of phones hanging out of her dress, and this is the way that it works, is that it's usually, you know, so someone says, oh, what's going on? I say, oh, my cup runneth over. You know, so I take my telephone out, and I've got my money over here, I've got my lipstick, you know. I always have something that I carry in my bra. So that's been one of my little mantras, is my cup runneth over. And now I'm going to start putting in more in the abundance category of the abundance of things, because people will say, you're bizarre, you know. But I am bizarre. But my cup runneth over. My grandmother is the one, on my mother's side, is the one who taught me to carry money in my bras, pin money. And I don't know if any of the rest of you are in the room that are old enough to remember that concept, you know, that you go out somewhere and you're wanting to get home on your own or something, it's, you know, pin money. So I just evolved from there. when I no longer had the geek belt, you know, to put the phones and stuff on, and the pagers and all the rest of that stuff that we carried years ago, I started putting it in my bra. And I stopped carrying a purse because I'd leave it somewhere. And so that just became my habit. And I've always said if they say at my funeral that I was eccentric, I won't mind. So I am eccentric. So then the next thing that came to me after dispensing with the idea of that is, well, I know this story about the cup runneth over, and I thought, but I don't know if this is what they really wanted to talk about. You all know the story of this Zen monk who traveled all over Asia looking for this particular teacher that he had heard about, that he wanted so much for this master to be his teacher. And he finally found him, and he went into the temple, and he introduced himself, and he said, you know, I'm just so interested to have the opportunity to become your disciple. Would you please consider taking me on? And he starts talking about all the places he's been and what he's learned and what he knows. And the master says, well, let's come in and have a cup of tea and we'll talk about it. So they sit down in the tea room area, and they're starting to have their little tea service. And the student or the pupil holds out his cup for the master to pour his tea, and he pours the tea, and he pours it, and he pours it, and the pupil's thinking it's running all down his hand, and it's running off the top of the cup, and it's falling down onto the floor, and his cup is running over. And finally he pulls it back, and he says, Master, are you okay? What's going on? You know, stop pouring the tea. And he said, well, I'm just using this as an example of showing you how I don't think I can take you as my pupil, because your cup is already running over. There isn't any place for anything that I might teach you to go and for you to learn. So to me, that's always been a story about allowing to be open at the top and to allow information to come in, but also to have an idea about the equivalent of something coming in where there's a void that's been created. That those are principles that we teach in Science of Mind. But that didn't seem quite like the right thing to talk about, because I thought surely they want to talk about abundance. They want to talk about, you know, Thanksgiving, November, all that type of stuff. So it still hadn't been happening to me. And then this week after I came back, I really started putting in my brain, my cup runneth over, my cup runneth over. That comes from the Bible somewhere, doesn't it? But, you know, I'm a little far removed from Bible studies of my childhood. And I just put that out there into the universe and into the subconscious. I never went to look it up yet. I hadn't gone online or tried to figure out what it came from or anything. I just thought, I want to know, you know, where does this come from in the Bible? So I woke up Thursday morning, and I don't know if you all are like me, but I wake up with a song, or I wake up with some kind of phrase or some sort of saying very often early in the morning before I'm beginning my meditation. This is before, you know, my feet hit the floor. And I woke up that morning with, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Where is this coming? This is definitely not, you know, this is coming from somewhere out there in the one mind. And I started thinking about it, meditating on it, and it came to me. Those are the lines after the phrase, my cup runneth over. Didn't give me the ones before or the cup runneth over. They are from the 23rd Psalm in the Hebrew part of the Bible. So I realized, okay, this definitely came from the universe and must be what I'm supposed to be talking about. So I started thinking about it. I don't know, I don't want to reactivate anyone's, you know, stuff over their starter religion here. But, you know, because for most of us, Science of Mind was not our starter religion or spiritual philosophy. But I decided this came from something other than me, and this must be what I'm needing to talk about and to bring up. So today I'm going to talk to you about the 23rd Psalm from a metaphysical perspective. And the title of my talk is Psalm of Self-Transformation. I had to memorize the Psalm when I was a kid in my starter religion. And so I lay there and I'm thinking about it this Thursday morning, and I'm realizing as I'm saying the words to myself, and I didn't remember it all exactly, but it goes something like this. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That's the one I learned, the King James Version. And as I was, trying to piece it back together and remember the lines of the psalm, I realized this is a treatment. This is a blueprint. This is a path for transformation to the thought of abundance. This is a blueprint for a new way of being, a new way of thinking, if I look at it more from the metaphysical perspective. And that little aha was what brought me to say, okay, this is definitely what I want to talk to you about today, is this idea behind the 23rd Psalm, and how if we would look at it from the perspective of it is a treatment, it is a blueprint, it is a path for understanding that will take us to this level of my cup runneth over, and that surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We're very fond of talking in Science of Mind about seek ye first the kingdom, and all else will be added unto it. If you take the 23rd Psalm and kind of reverse engineer it, where it starts with, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever, instead of that being the ending, then that takes us to right at the point of where we know we are dwelling in the kingdom. We are in the kingdom. We are a part of and not apart from Spirit. And that it is God dwelling in us as well as us dwelling in the kingdom of God. That it is the kingdom of God that is within. So this indwelling Spirit and the idea of how the phrases in the psalm take us through that level of building trust, understanding that we have no lack or no need, and putting us at the place of seeing that this idea of evil, which I want to call those cross-current thoughts that Doug read to us about. It's just error in thinking. Evil is the thought of separation, or erroneous, or in some cases, destructive thinking processes that we often find ourselves kind of stuck in. So I'm going to go back through this kind of line by line and talk about it a little bit from the metaphysical perspective, and maybe a couple of the words and how in today's Bible scholars, they're finding that maybe some of the words weren't translated quite the way we might do it today. The idea of the psalm, there's 6 verses, 118 words, and in my interpretation, 2 metaphors. The first metaphor is that of the shepherd and the flock and the sheep and the tending to their needs. The second metaphor is more that of the welcoming host in the dwelling, in the temple, in the house. So in the first one, the Lord is my shepherd. Now, we know that this could be a different understanding today about the concept of the Lord. The Lord, in this case, from those days in the Hebrew world, was someone who was the master, was someone who had the opportunity to make the law, lay down the law of the household or the field if you were under that master. And so I see this as the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. This is a combination of love and law. So we have the lawmaker as the Lord, and the Lord is the shepherd who is tending his flock is the love. So we have the principle of love and law in that first couple of lines of the psalm. And that I shall not want. And I'll share with you, when I learned this as a kid, I thought, how come I don't want him? I didn't quite get it. I didn't quite get it that I shall not want meant I will have no need or lack. And then later on, I think I finally, put it together. It was kind of like that, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. You try as a child to put these things together in some circumstances, and I often use that as in Inner Child Journey as an example of how the things that we thought we understood as a child were completely erroneous and misapprehended, and so why can't we let go of that other stuff, like you're not enough or whatever? The other things that we heard as children are equally as misunderstood. So the maker of the law and the creative process of the love and the law is at the beginning of the psalm as opened up to us as an opportunity for how to live our lives, how to be guided, how to accept the divine guidance of the shepherd. That is the Lord, that is the love, that is the law, through the process of the creative aspect of how we understand it in science of mind, of taking this teaching symbol of the V here and moving down through it and taking that subconscious part of the center of the V where the two lines are parallel to each other and saying, this is the area, this is the creative medium, this is the process through which I might live my life. If I accept divine guidance in love and law and continue on the path of righteousness to right thinking, if I will take this opportunity. So I think that that's the first part, is that here's this, God is, I am. There is love, there is law. And the second part has to do with what I consider to be a meditative opportunity, where he leads me by the still waters. He maketh me to lie down in the green pastures. He restoreth my soul. That this is an opportunity for us to be open to the idea that if we allow that divine guidance, if we allow the presence of God to be a part of us, as us, then that meditative state that we're in by the still waters, laying on the green grass. And I think the green grass in that also in the shepherd metaphor is about, the sheep can get up and eat that stuff. It's pretty good food for them. That's all a part of that abundance as well. I shall not want. I have green pasture. I have water. So I have both food and drink, as well as this meditative opportunity in this beautiful surrounding to allow the nature of God to be present in the nature of the physical universe. That there is no spot where God is not. Then we're able to take that path of righteousness, and every once in a while that we might fall off of it, into the valley of the shadow of death. We have that trust, that faith, that love of spirit that holds us in the position of you're guided, guarded, and protected. The shepherd has his hook. He can pull you out of the crevice if you get stuck in there as one of his sheep. That's part of that metaphor. But for us, it's about this whole aspect of spirit being indwelling and being with us as a part of us in every step we take, in every move we make, that we are surrounded by, in, through, as, and for, the spirit that we call God. Again, there are a lot of other things. If you want to say the prayer of the Psalm 23, you can take Lord, you can take God, you can take the word thou, you can change it up to I am or to spirit, or whatever works for you as the God of your understanding, that will make it easier for you not to be reactive to the words. But there's no neediness because there is this divine source. So when we get into this valley of the shadow of death part of the psalm, here's where we are in this moment, but we're probably in the past and the present. We're looking at this evilness that is the cross-current thoughts that Doug read to us about today that keep us from our abundance because we're not clear. We don't have the power of clarity. So that erroneous thinking is sitting us in the state of the fear of the past, or the pain of the past, the fear of the future. Those are the things that are evil in our understanding of it, rather than the way it's portrayed often in society or in other spiritual traditions. Our evil and our sin is all still within us. It is our inability to make the mark. It's our unwillingness to see the light. It's our opportunity to change or to shift or to grow when some calamity happens. So, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Now, the rod and the staff in the shepherd's world, the rod was like a bat or a cudgel that they could sort of fend off wild animals from the flock of sheep. And then the staff, the traditional picture with the hook and the crook kind of thing on it, was to guide and to kind of tap on their butt or protect the sheep a little bit, or shove them off to one side, kind of create the path for them that they couldn't get past. So those are the things that give us comfort, because if we really are subscribing to the idea that there is no spot where God is not, and that God is in, through, and around us always, then whatever we're sensing is evil, whatever we feel is missing the mark, whatever is that dark shadow, that valley of the shadow of death, which according to some things that I read in the last couple of days says that the new interpretation of the word is that there was no mention of death. It's a very, very dark shadow. But either way, death was the thing that most people had the greatest fear for, and I think probably still do to this day. So it presented itself as a good translation, I guess, when they were bringing the Greek in from the Hebrew. Larry may know more about these things than I do about these words, but we're able to know that through faith and love, we are able to go through whatever it is that seems to be confronting us, and we go through it. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I don't stop, I don't stay, I don't hang up my hat, I'm going to go through it. And again, the implication is you're not going around it. You're moving through whatever you're moving through. I'm moving through whatever I'm moving through. I told you guys some stories last month when I was here. Still in it, still moving through it, still going past that. But if I've allowed my soul to be restored, which is, I think, to be reminded. I think Doug used that word today too, and is to be reminded. That is to have our mind remade, and to know that we are changing our thinking to change our lives. So thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. I believe, again, the enemies are our thoughts, our misunderstandings, our judgments, our perspective about something that is potentially off the mark, because we have allowed ourselves to feel separate from either a person, place, thing, or our own internal activity. Those are our enemies. And to say that Spirit has prepared this table for me, that's the abundance factor coming in again too, that this whole table of the host has prepared for the arriving guest before me in the presence of mine enemies. Now, part of the culture in that time too is if you went into the temple or you went into someone's home and you were an invited guest, it was kind of like a little demilitarized zone, that you might truly have enemies, that outside of that environment you were enemies, or you go back to being enemies, or you go back to fighting, or whatever was going on. But while you were in the temple, while you were in the host's home, everybody's on their best behavior, right? So there's no enemy in that surrounding. And I think that's part of the metaphor of this too, is that we allow ourselves to be open to all of it and to recognize that there is no other. There's only one of us in this room. There is no other, there is no enemy, there is no opportunity to say, I think this applies for me, but not so much for them. Or I want to accept everyone at an equal level in my life. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's challenging. But this is to me what that means, is that we're being welcomed to the table, to the abundance, to the kingdom, to all of what the kingdom has to offer. And there is no other, there is no enemy, that we are all children of God. And I believe that that's part of what happens next, that thou anointest my head with oil. This is also a part of sometimes the ritual, as I understand it, with invited guests, that they would pour oil over their head. Seems kind of a funny way to greet people to me, but at any rate. But it was all part of acknowledging that they were special. And it was part of the abundance, because oil in those days as well as today is often a precious commodity. I don't mean the type you put in your gas tank, but essential oils, precious oils, that type of oil is still an expensive commodity. And it was part of the generosity of spirit of the host to say, we have an abundance here, and we're sharing this abundance with you, and you're a guest in our home, in our dwelling, in our temple, in our kingdom, and we're going to treat you appropriately. And I believe that metaphorically and metaphysically both, that this was a way of saying in so many gestures that you're part of the chosen ones. Sometimes in their world, anointing someone was effectively appointing them to some task or some charge that they were going to go out and perform. And being anointed, it's kind of like being knighted in England or whatever, meant, you're the one. So I believe that all of us are appointed, anointed, and blessed, because it's a type of blessing also to do that anointing with oil. And to expect and understand that no one is separate from, more special than in the eyes of God. That we are all the children of Spirit, the children of God, and that we are here together as a family, as a group, as a community, that there is no separation in spirit. So we're all anointed, we're all blessed, and we're all appointed to do the work of Spirit, to do God's work. Those paths of righteousness for His name's sake is a part of being on the path, being the example, showing the way, any of those concepts that you want to adopt to say, that's the path of righteousness. If we carry the principles and practice them in all of our affairs, then we are on the righteous path. And Spirit has chosen us because we're here. You know, we're the ones we're waiting for. Plain and simple. And then we get to that line about my cup runneth over. And again, I think the metaphor here is the same as we understand it to be, and kind of like different from the one in the story I told you about the Zen monk. But our cup runneth over was also a sign of abundance, of greatness, of wealth, of more than enough, more than was needed, more than would be perceived to be lacking or wanted. And in the cup runneth over aspect of it, everyone had the wine. You know, everyone was shared with because there was plenty. I heard a word this week that I'd never heard before. I haven't looked it up yet, but I heard it on a tape that I was listening to called plenteous. And I think it must be an arcane term, but the tape was made back in the 80s. And I thought, well, that's kind of new. I'm going to have to look that one up, but I haven't had time to do it yet. But that's how my cup runneth over. It is plenteous. And then we're at the end, which is also the beginning. That now we understand that we've been through understanding and accepting that there is no lack, there is no want, we're happy, we're whole, we're perfect, we're complete. We know how to deal with our calamities, our evils, our shadows. We're meditative, we're allowing Spirit to guide us, we're on the path of righteousness. So how can we help it not be dwelling in the kingdom forever, in the house of the Lord forever? And surely goodness and mercy. I found that one of the new interpretations for the word that was in the original Hebrew for mercy is actually unconditional love. So, you know, we're dwelling in this place of unconditional love and of the goodness of God. And the word was hesed, H-E-S-E-D, and the word for goodness is T-O-B, Tob, something like that, Tob. So that those were the words in the original Hebrew of the Psalm of David. That's the title that's given in the Bible for this psalm, the Psalm of David, David the King of Kings, who was a shepherd that became the king. All of this is a part of our perspective about how it works, that surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And now, if you're open to it, I'd like to let my cup runneth over and get something out of here. And I asked Skip to play a little music for us, if I thought it was in here. Here we go. If you're interested to do it, in honor of all of us being anointed and appointed, I've brought some frankincense oil. And if you would like to line up and come up, I'll take on the role of being the anointer or whatever. And we know that we'll take this with us into this next week for Thanksgiving, that we're all anointed, we're all appointed, and we're all blessed. And we pass that on to all of those that we come in contact with in the next week. So if you are interested to participate, please come forward and queue up, and we'll play the music, and then I'll finish the talk. You first, absolutely. Surely you are blessed and dwell in the house of the Lord. It is. That's why I carry it. That's exactly why I put it in there. Exactly. You know me.
So we play Ash Wednesday, huh?
Yeah, whatever.
All right.
Thank you. Namaste. Just wafting up here. Well, thank you for allowing me to provide that opportunity for that little bit of spiritual, experiential, that we know that we are, through Spirit, appointed, anointed, and blessed. This is our life, this is my life, your life, our life now. That this new thought, this new idea of how abundance is everywhere, that our cup runneth over, that we have all and will always have all of whatever is needed because all the kingdom is ours, that it is available to us. We have this protection, we have this bounty, and we are in communion with, a part of and not apart from Spirit. And surely goodness and mercy will follow us all the days of our lives, and we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Namaste.